It's where we've always been. So like my grandfathers, they said, we walked with the dinosaurs. They weren't lying when they said that, according to our DNA. So we've always been here, with the exception of two tribes or nations that has some Asian DNA in them. And that was the Hopi and Apache. So they're the ones that came across the Bering Strait. And there's two other tribes up in Alaska that have that too. But the other red nations have always been here. So this is our identity, who we are. We've always been here. It's time to think of your ancestors. That's your true identity, who you are, before anybody came to this continent from these other DNAs that came here. So it's time to remember your ancestors, and like that. In 1948, Korzak Żukowski is a Polish guy that met with our family, and he asked if he could do a sculpture in the Black Hills of my grandfather. So at that time, the family told him that you have to do this without no government help. He said, I promise to do that. So when he made that promise, my father's three older brothers, three of my uncles, posed for the face of the mountain. That's how he came up with Crazy Horse Mountain, the memorial that's going on up there. And then he was told, when you're done with this sculpture, you can't tell anybody how you did this. And Korzak kept his promise. He never told anybody how he did that. So 2003, when this Indian memorial was up at the Little Bighorn, this is the first time this government acknowledged the Lakota and Cheyennes that fought at this battle. So there's an Indian memorial up there. That dedication was in 2003. And so our family, the Crazy Horse family, we did a ride from our family cemetery from Cheyenne River to Little Bighorn. 360 miles we rode with the youth. My grandfather, he always paid attention to the youth because the youth was the strength of a nation. And the elders was the knowledge and wisdom of a nation. So when we did this ride, it was 360 miles, and that's the circumference of a circle, 360. There's a meaning behind that. And after this dedication on June 25th, 2003, June 26th was Korzak's wife's birthday, Ruth. So we went to Crazy Horse Mountain and we did a little ride for her, honored her for her birthday. I think it was her 74th birthday at that time. And that's when we told her how her husband did the mountain. And that was the first time she heard that. She said in 1948, she was walking down the hall and my husband was doing something in that room, and the next time she walked by and looked in that room, he was sitting back and he was done with that sculpture. And the next time she walked by, she said he was burning something up in the fireplace. He never told me how he did this. I never asked him how he did this. So in 2003, she just now heard the truth of how that mountain came to be. So our family, we've always known that horse on that mountain. His name was Ian, means rock or spirit rock. That was the name of my grandfather's horse. And because he lost a horse before that, called Wakian, why that sculpture is done on Thunder Mountain to remember his horse that he lost. So there's a meaning behind those, why that's being done there. So when we're legal under the federal law, they had a dream up there of a medical university. And they're to teach modern and traditional medicines. There's already some graduates that are graduating from the university. So we're gonna beef it up a little better for them when our family is done with litigation, because our family can be in litigation for a while when this court case is done. So these companies that are watching this court case determine the blood heirs of the Crazehorse estate. When this court case is done, they want to settle out of court with the real family, the blood family of Crazehorse. So this is what they're all waiting on. None of them want to fight it in court because they're going to lose. Like Cornell Brewing Company lost. So to them, it's like throwing money away. So it's best to cut our losses, ask the family for permission. So we're the first family to do this under the federal law, Native family. We'd have to ask permission to use my grandfather's name. So when this court case is done, and you see Crazehorse's name out there, and there's not a trademark on there, you know they're going to get sued by the family, and like that. So when I was telling this, I thought about Geronimo's family and kind of smiled, because when they protect their grandfather's name, look how many jump out of airplanes and say Geronimo, or like that. They're going to have to pay for that. Like that, you know, so it's, in our medicines, humor, laughter is a medicine. And it makes you stress-free, it makes you feel good. It's good to hear laughter and like that. So these kind of things, our family, we're doing in this federal court case. And this is on my father's side, my paternal side of my family. I'm Crazehorse's grandson. On my mom's side, she has a unique tree. She's Nikoju, one of the Lakota Nation, one of the bands of Lakota. On her father's side, she's Nikoju and Cheyenne. I'm also a grandson of Morningstar, or Dawn Knife, Cheyenne. And on my grandma's side, my mom's mom, she was War Eagle. And he was a Mdewakanton, a Dakota. And his wife was Nakota, Wapekute. So my grandfathers on that side were both. And like that, so. And they also they were married to some Frenchmen, Théophile Brouillard and Paul Traversy. So I'm also part French. So this is my true identity, who I am. When you deny a bloodline to yourself, you're denying a grandfather or a grandmother where that blood comes from. So all these people that have been assuming my family and my grandfather, when they use these 6 documents, they're finding out that they're not of our family, and they forgot about their grandfathers and grandmothers, where they came from. So like our grandfather said, with truth, time to heal the people. So we know as truth that their grandfathers and grandmothers are happy that they're not forgotten, because that's what they were doing. They were forgetting about them by assuming they were from our family. So these kind of things we're doing, my family. I'm also, me and my 2 younger brothers are the administrators for the Crazehorse family and also for War Eagle family. So two grandfathers, we represent 8,000 blood family today. So I run into family all over, all over this country. I run into Crazy Horse or Warrigal family. And my Dakota grandfather, when he was here, Warrigal, he made a treaty with his government. It's called the Iowa Territory. And the Iowa Territory was half of South Dakota, eastern half, North Dakota, Minnesota, west side of Wisconsin, and all of Iowa. That's the Iowa Territory of the Dakota, Nakota, and the Wampum Nations land bases. My Lakota grandfathers was the headwaters of the Missouri to the headwaters of the North Platte. It's a river boundary of our Lakota Nation. That's our identity, who we are. We're not of these federal agencies that they put us on. So like coming from Cheyenne River, 4 bands of the Lakota Nation are on that agency. Nikoja, Two Kettle, Blackfoot, and the Nobos, Tazichos. We're not Cheyenne River, that's the government name. It's like Pine Ridge, Rosebud, or Standing Rock, or whatever federal agencies under the federal government. Those are just names. That's not their identity, who they are. So all these red nations, they have land bases like that. And we know as truth. And my Cheyenne grandfather, Morning Star or Dawn Knife, his land base was from the Platte River, east side of the Rockies, all the way down to the Santa Fe Trail. To where today, Cheyenne, Fort Collins, Denver, Colorado Springs, Pueblo, and Santa Fe, all within our nation, of the Cheyenne Nation. So my grandfather, he was here till 1908, so he said, told our family that our grandfather, his father, Shalai, was buried in the west of Fort Collins today. That's the Cheyenne's ancestral burial ground of their people, just like the Black Hills is for ours. So I know something's coming up for my Cheyenne grandfather, where I have to stand up for him too. So when we started, the Lakota grandfather, Crazy Horse, and then my Dakota, Nakota grandfathers, where this Iowa Territory came. But because this land base goes into Canada, it involves 2 countries, it becomes an international case. So when this North Direction comes for our family, this international lawyer, he's going to file something in world court under national laws for these land bases of our grandfathers. So it's time for truth now. There are a lot of assumptions out there. So this is where our way of living life, it was 24/7, 365 days a year. It wasn't just one day out of the week or like that. It was every second of the day, how they walked here, without these 7 English words. So it's time to remember our ancestors and to walk this way of living life. And these kind of things, we know that all these red nations have these. In the United Nations, how they recognize countries is a land base, culture, tradition, and language. Why I call these red nations, they all have this. They all have a land base, they all have culture, tradition, and language. They can be recognized under the United Nations as a nation. So we're not tribes or like that, we're nations on this continent. So it's time for these kind of truths to come out now. Time to share it with the children. they need to know these truths. And like that, time for our people of these red nations to stand up now and think of our grandmother Earth. Because we're the ones that have to stand up and correct everything. This two-legged earthman human being, help that person, because it has no skin color. It's a person that has a red heart, walks with respect. So when I was told to remind the world, I was telling them, when you're truthful and honest with yourself, when you don't lie to yourself, you don't lie to the Creator or God, or you don't lie to the people you talk to, you don't lie to yourself. Only you, each person, when you're not truthful and honest, you're lying to yourself. So this change has to come individually with each person. Nobody could do it for you. Only you could do this. So the change has to be us, we and us. These kind of things. It's time to do. So our family, this evening, I see a lot of them. Thank you very much for listening to me and Bill. May is our one that helps us with our books, does a live feed and like that. So not just the people that are here, the ones that can't come or like this, they could see it live and like that. It's time for truth and like this. So, since our book came out in 2016, some of them might have read it or like this. Now's the time to ask questions. We're willing to answer any question that you have or like that. So, yes.
How does the family feel about your grandfather, whether he ever had a photograph taken or not?
No photographs of my grandfather or his father. And this is where at truth, the name Crazy Horse. The grandfather had it first, late 1700s to 1825. The father had it from 1825 to 1858. He was the second Crazy Horse. The third Crazy Horse, who everybody knows as the warrior, little bighorn like this. He carried it from 1858 to 1877 when he got assassinated. So he just had a daughter that we tell in the book. She was only 2 years old when she passed. So under tradition of our people, the name came back to the parents, and at that time just his father was there. So he got his name back. Wagula, who Bill mentioned earlier, he was known as Old Man Crazy Horse. He got his name back, he handed it back into the family. Today a grandson carries it for the family. One of my younger brothers is Crazy Horse for the family. So as truth, Crazy Horse is still alive and well in our family. So that was a name that was handed down, carried by three people, 3 persons. 4 now, with my younger brother carrying it. So that's a truth that we could say. So these kind of things, what we tell in this book. When we made this book, we didn't take these stories from nobody. They're directly from the blood family. So you're not gonna find no references in back of this book where we got this story from this book or that book or like that. You're not going to find that because they're directly from the blood family of Crazy Horse. But what we have back there is how we showed our proof in this federal court and like that. But the publisher made it real small. So we put a link in the appendix. And if you go to that link and click on it with your computer, that link, it'll show all those documents in the back, as big as you want. If you have a movie theater, you can show it that big if you want to see it. Because us, the family, we have nothing to hide. And that was our publisher that did that, so we put this link in there to show that. Yes?
Are you selling it electronically as well so that we can access it?
Well, we come to think, of it, we have it's on Amazon, Kindle, and Nook, and
There are audio.
there's not yet on audio.
That's a question.
Yeah.
So you know about I've seen a tapestry done by Standing Bear. Is that part of the blood families?
He was an in-law to the family, and in 1948, because the family was in hiding, he was the one that met, and they put it out there like he's the one that did all that, and like this, when the family was, Korzak met with the family, but yet he couldn't tell what he
I was
was told.
felt kind of lucky to see that, because we had it over at Amon Carter
Yeah.
a couple of years back. Showed they had of Indian artifacts, of indigenous artifacts.
Yeah,
But the thing is,
Yeah,
it shows the whole dynamics. It even tells you partially when Crazy Horse came in, the battle a little later on, because it also tells you that they were hiding whenever the Custer and his men came up on them, that they were hiding in the tall grasses. Plus the whole the dynamic.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff.
Dogleg and everything like that to the creek.
when we made this book, everything that you read like that become fiction, assumption, non-truth. And that's why as truth, when we made this book, there was over 500 books written about my grandfather, movies that were made and like this, all become fiction, non-truth, assumption. That's what they all become. And this is directly from the blood family, and like that. So anything you have read or
I didn't read it, I saw the drawing, but it wasn't,
yeah.
it's all drawn out pretty well. I mean, they even
Yeah.
have aspects about it you wouldn't even expect,
Yeah.
that are there, just the details.
So 2001, when we told our identity, we were able to tell our identity, we went to Little Bighorn battlefield. And we met with the Park Service up there. And nobody from the Lakota Nation had ever told of the Battle of the Little Bighorn. When the United States declared war on the Lakota Nation, not Crows or Cheyenne or Arapaho or whoever that had been claiming before, nobody from the Lakota Nation ever told this battle because the battle story was hidden with the family. So 2001, when we were able to tell our identity up there, that's where we told all the tribes up there that my grandfather's a Rikoju. He's not an Oglala. And like this, so when we met with the Park Service up there, they invited us to spend another day. And when we met with the superintendent and 3 former superintendents, the curators, the historians, and like that, they had 2 tables set up, and they had the map of the Bighorn. And they asked, how did your grandfathers do this? So we told them there were 6 miles of camp, and there's over 1,000 books written about that battle, and they all say there's only 3 miles of camp. And there were 6 miles of camp, and like this. And everything how our grandfathers did this battle, when we told them, their historian was sitting with the soldiers' journals. At that time in 1876, every soldier had a journal that they were writing, what they were seeing, what they're experiencing, and like this. So what he had, when we told this story, matched up. Everything what the soldiers were seeing, like this, matched up to that. And with that 6 miles of camp, there was a map that 2 weeks after the battle, this guy came from, I think Philadelphia or somewhere, a reporter, and walked that battlefield. And he made a pencil sketch drawing of Little Bighorn, and where they said there was only 3 miles, but he showed broken TV poles and like this, where it was 6 miles of camp that was there, and like this verified what we were saying. So when our family went in hiding, the story of the battle went in hiding, why nobody from the Lakota Nation ever told of this battle until 2001. So they gave us permission. At that time, the historian said that they had 2 questions. They said, after in 1984, a fire came through the battlefield and burnt 600 of the 640 acres. And when all the grass was burnt off, they noticed rocks that were right below that last sand hill. So, and there were river rocks. So then they said we checked our geographic maps and there's supposed to be no rocks in that area. So that's when we told them those are markers. This is the only battle that the Lakota and the Cheyenne, when they removed their relative or family off the battlefield, they were told to bring a rock from the river and mark that spot where they fell. So those are all called cairns. They're markers and then
What's that?
they were told, they said they found 2 soldiers' skeletons at that time in 1984. Because they came in there like forensics came in there, like a crime scene. They documented every shell casing like this, so they could simulate this person fired a gun from here because a bullet, just like a thumbprint, each firing pin was like this. So they could tell how that person was coming up and what the soldiers were doing, how their skirmish lines and like this, how their retreat, those white headstones of where they are. So they gave us permission to the Park Service, because they won't allow anybody on that battlefield. They gave us permission to walk the battlefield and mark these. And we marked 215 of them. And you can see the battle happening and like this. So, when they said, their historian said, we're still missing 26 soldiers, the government. So we took him down to Deep Ravine and we showed him where there was 9 men. And he had the paperwork. He said, we already covered this whole area, because they had the machines that shoot underground and like this, the radar, whatever that they use. And he said, we already checked that and we didn't find any. And then when he was looking at his paperwork, he figured out that those guys set up right on top of those 9 graves. They scanned all the way around it, but not where they were standing. So when they checked, they found it was 9. And then we took him to Sharpshooter Ridge, where there was 17 laying up there. They never found, so we showed them where they were. That's from our family's oral history. So now that all your soldiers are accounted for, now it's our turn. Why these red headstones start going up there, marking the Lakota and Cheyenne that fell at that battle. Yes?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Red Deer.
Huh?
We moved back when I was freshman, when I was a freshman in high school, and I remember when my friends, her dad was telling us that the women killed Custom.
No.
Okay,
You read about it in the book. We tell who did that.
thank you.
Yes.
And that's what was running in the comment and
We made a lot of assumptions.
that sounds like.
So that's where, because the United States declared war on the Lakota Nation, not the Cheyenne or the Arapaho or like that. And the reason why they were there was because Dolnife Morningstar daughter was married into our family, Crazyor's family. So in support of his daughter, he would come. At that time, the whole Cheyenne Nation was following him. So that's why there were 6 miles of camp. And they have Sundance north of Reindeer today, where Jack Bailey's land, where that deer medicine rock and like this and like that. So he remembered his grandmother was 9 years old when those Sundance poles are still up. Where today that highway goes right to the middle of the Sundance Ground, north of that gym town, going towards Colstrip. Yeah, we ran through where the Sundance Ground was and like this. So, yeah, we researched all that stuff. Yes.
Has it always been common knowledge amongst the family? Because I only read about it, and when I seen your what you posted on YouTube about Secretary of State having the treaty that Crazy Horse was gonna have his own.
Yes, I mean, so that's where, when my grandfather was promised that agency, his uncle put that in 1874, Longhorn. Put that agency in there. So when he was asked, he said, I want my uncle's agency. I want it modified. And there's a 10-mile wide, comes down to a point on that agency is like this. Right at the tip of that point was where his mother's buried. And I want my mother inside this agency, why they made it like that. But if you're not family, you never know where his mother was buried, or the family, because they're all laying on marked graves. So this is what we had Bill record for our family to let them see where she's laying and like this, and like that. And if you're not family, you'll never find them. Yeah.
Yeah, my grandfather, he was Crazy Horse's uncle.
Yeah, I mean, so He-Dog knew Old Man Crazy Horse, and he rode with the Warrior. There's two Crazy Horses he rode with, and like that. So, and I think, what is it? You know, what are you? What kind of band are you from?
St. Chocolate.
What? So out of the 7 bands, what band it was? Your grandfather.
It was the Thunderhawk and Red Goose, John Red Goose, and then Chief He-Dog.
Yeah, I mean, there's 7 bands in the Lakota, so you had to be one of those bands. What band was you from?
Tetuan, St. Chocolate from Rosewood.
Sichongo and Oglala started in 1886. So Red Cloud, he's from the Cuthead band, but his family just now wrote that in an authorized biography of their grandfather, and they stated in it that he's from the Cuthead band. So how could he be in Oglala? And just like Spotted Tail, the Burnt Eye, how could he be that when his father is Mdewakanton, Dakota? His mother was Tuketi. So that's his true identity. So a lot of assumptions, and where like our grandfathers, they said in 1886, this government made 2 paper tribes as Oglala and Sichongo. There's no such bands like that under the Lakota Nation. So either after Minikoju, Two Kettle, Blackfoot, Itazitor, Nobos, Hunkpapa, Cuthead, or Flathead. These are the 7 bands of the Lakota Nation. So when you look back to one of those, you're only looking back as far as 1886. You think that Sichongo, Oglala, and like that. So you have to look further than that.
Yeah, and the reason I was asking you about the Crazy Horse as his agency, because I had, well, my brother's sister was, close friend, she's an archaeologist, and they were doing a lot of study around there. And she's the one that told me that they had, the Secretary of State had his, it was already all signed and everything. You know, Crazy was gonna have his,
Yeah, only the blood family could claim that agency, because at the time when they brought that, his father was still here, Old Man Crazy Horse, or Waglula. So that's why they know that there's blood family out there. That's why 2001, when we got in this federal court case, we could prove we're the blood family. And when this court case is done, then they're in for a surprise.
yeah,
This government.
I talked to this one reporter, he actually wrote a book, Killing Crazy Horse, Thomas Powers, and he was on the Diamond.
Yeah, those are fiction. Those are all assumptions, they're non-truth.
Yeah.
Everybody, I mean, there's 500 books written about my grandfather, where I could say as truth, they're all assumptions. They're fiction, they're not truth. I could say that.
Yeah, I asked him about that, and he said there wasn't, but, I mean, because Black Elk had mentioned it in his book. And
Yeah, Black Elk is two kettle. He's on a two kettle band. Black Elk is yeah, and he didn't have a final say like what we did and whatever that was written about him. For us, we know English and we know our language. Why we could proofread it before. Why we have the final say in what's written. And that's what they didn't get to have. They didn't understand English. So it was just a white person looking through American lens, writing about somebody that, or people that they didn't even know. And like that. There's a lot of assumptions. And that's what, like
Sir,
what,
could you share your age with us?
I'm 63, we're 64. I'm the baby of the family. Yeah.
Could you tell us about the assassination of your grandfather, and was there really Ray Cloud and Spotted Tail? Did they have something to do with it? I've read somewhere.
Yes.
And then I have a second.
Read the book.
Yeah, I definitely will. Your opinion of Easter and his books on your family and other.
All fiction, non-truth, assumptions.
Easton, the neighbor.
Yes, yes.
I had read that he was.
No. No, they don't know our family. Nobody knew our family till 2001 in this federal court case.
I mean, he was.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's 500 books written about my grandfather. He's just one of them.
The native physician in Pine Ridge at the
Yeah.
time of the Wounded Knee massacre.
Yeah.
But anyway, could you elaborate on your grandfather's assassination?
He knew that was happening 15 months before it happened. Put it on a rock north of Reindeer, Montana, today, on Jack Bailey's land. He showed what was going to happen, that the government and his own people were going to do this. And a similar thing happened in Iowa, where the United States came in and appointed two people, and they said, you two, we acknowledge, you two, we're going to deal with you two for all the lands in this area. So these nations, these red nations that lived there, they said, who are these two to speak for our people when they're not even from our nation and like this? So all those nations there labeled these two as two money chiefs. They're yes people that the United States put there. Same thing happened up there. Only thing, there were two paper tribes that the United States made, put two yes people in front of it and acknowledged them as they were a band of the Lakota when they're not. Because Red Cloud's from the Cuthead band. His father signed the '68 treaty under the Cuthead